whatever it is, just name it, write it down, because then you have no way to keep yourself sort of honest on like, am I actually doing it?
Yes.
So if it's about losing weight, if it's about, eating healthier, okay, then figuring out what are you going to eat every week?
Right.
Having a meal plan, setting that into motion, right? And then scheduling time to go do the workouts to make sure that you do it. And also, there are ways to help yourself do it. So I've heard of people who, like to work out first thing in the morning and they will sleep in their workout gear.
Interesting.
So when they wake up in the morning, it's like, well, I'm already in this, so I might as well just go do it. It gets you
really good
one
idea.
step closer.
Yes.
Because then, the morning happens and things go out and you just don't do it. So it's like anything that you can do to make it easier on yourself for your future self, you should do that.
Welcome to the Good Life Coach podcast. I am your host, Michelle Lamoureux. The intention of this show is to awaken you to your fullest potential. Join me each week for inspiring interviews to elevate an area of your life, as well as interviews with women entrepreneurs who are creating success on their own terms. Each episode provides actionable tips to guide you to design a life you love. Hey there, it's Michelle Lamoureux. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today because we are talking about a subject that I know a lot of people struggle with, which is procrastination. And joining us today is Paula Rizzo, who's an Emmy award-winning television producer, a media trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of Blissful Thinking and Blissful Living. Now, before I go a little bit more into Paula's bio, I just want to say that if you've had something in your mind that you wanted to do. For me, Paula knows it's write a book. And for some of you, it might be getting into shape, getting strong, getting fit. You may have wanted to go back to school. Just hold in your mind what it is that you want to think about, that you've been procrastinating about as we get into this interview. Because Paula if there's anybody who's going to help you figure this out, it is Paula. She was a guest in the very first year of my show, and I'm so happy to have you back for the fourth year of the show. And in 2019, she taught us how to get media attention with her expertise as an Emmy award-winning television producer and media trainer. And as the best-selling author of 2 books, Blissful Thinking and Blissful Living, Paula taught us how to use lists to live a happier, less stressed life. Welcome back, Paula.
Thank you. I'm so excited to continue the conversation.
Yes. And you have so many important skills. I feel like I just would love to be in your brain. Like when you wake up, everything's probably like in this beautiful, organized row of information or something. Is that how you are? Do you find like that's how you've been?
Well, you teach what you most need to learn, And so I think that for me, being in television for years, you had no other way to get things done than to be organized, or else you were not going to make it.
Okay.
So for me, that then spilled over into all the other aspects of my life. And I'm like, oh, this really works really well. Let me just do that. So yes, but it has been a work in progress. It's not, I am organized, but it takes a little work.
Okay. I think that's going to make people feel better because I feel like there are people who literally, since they were little kids, were like that little organized person and their brain is oriented that way. And then there's those of us who, we get distracted and need to have more focus. So tell us though, let's just kind of anchor it with what are some of the key reasons that you're aware of that people procrastinate? Why do we do that?
Fear. Fear is the biggest reason, truly. And there was a Princeton University study that found that fear and anxiety are really, the 2 big reasons that you would procrastinate on anything. And so first is facing the fear and saying, okay, what am I afraid of? And there's 2 things that you could be afraid of. One is that you don't know how to do the thing that you want to do. So like your taxes, you don't know how to do the taxes. So you are procrastinating it because you just don't have that skill.
Okay.
Or you could be fearful of success. Now, this is an interesting one.
Yes.
Because a lot of times this is about self-sabotage. This is about, if I go do that thing and write that novel and become the successful novelist, and then my whole life will change, which is exciting, but very scary. And so we like to stay where we are. This is comfy. This is okay. This is working. So if you don't push yourself, nothing changes. And so that's where the procrastination comes in. So it's really about like thinking through, okay, what is the thing and why am I really procrastinating?
Okay. Let's give examples just because I think the more tangible we can make it, and I'm just trying to think of the audience. So selfishly, I'm going to focus on two. One is the book, because you and I were in a writing group and your book is done or almost done. Mostly done. Well, yes. I mean, you're on the third draft of edit. So like, I'm so impressed with you right now. I'm like, oh my God, Paul, I'm so excited for you. And then there's me who, has finished a chapter. So we can use that as an example, but also I feel like, and as the new year is approaching, I just feel like another one that people like go, oh, I really need to get into shape.
Yes.
I really want to get into shape. And I think people really do. And I don't think they're afraid of getting into shape. I don't know. But, can we use
that could change your whole life too. Getting into shape could change who your friends are, could change where you go out to eat. It could change how people see you. It could change your whole wardrobe. Like your whole identity will change. Your body changes. Your whole self changes.
That's true.
And so there are, even subconsciously, there's a lot that goes on in your mind to sort of protect you, to say, hey, you know what? If I don't change anything, then things stay the same. I don't have to move here or there or do, different things. But as far as like the book goes, one of the things people say, I wish I could write a book. And so, yes, saying it out loud, writing it down, all of these things are really helpful. Telling somebody about it, being accountable, which we can talk about accountability because that's really, really helpful and part of how I've been able to do this. But I think another piece is to really set yourself up for success. And most people don't do that. Most people don't say, okay, let's break this apart and see like what does have to happen if I'm going to write a book. There's a list of things you have to do. Many, many, many things, as you know. And then being able to take that list and say, okay, let's plug these pieces onto my calendar. Let's make this part of my day. Let's make this part of my week. Let's make this part of my month, whatever it is. Most people do not do that step. They just have the big dream of, I'd love to write a book.
Yes. Lose the weight. And it's not scheduled. You're saying it's not scheduled, and that's a big problem.
And you need some little micro tasks in there because there's so many more steps to it than, than just the big, you just want to cross off write book, but there are a lot of things in between that have to happen.
Okay. So what would a calendar look like for someone who wants to get fit?
So for getting fit, right? So you want to first, I would think, set your goals. Right? What does success look like for you? I mean, the same thing with writing a book. Like, is it that you write 100 words a week? And that's okay. Whatever it is, just name it, write it down, because then you have no way to keep yourself sort of honest on like, am I actually doing it?
Yes.
So if it's about losing weight, if it's about, eating healthier, okay, then figuring out what are you going to eat every week?
Right.
Having a meal plan. Setting that into motion, right? And then scheduling time to go do the workouts to make sure that you do it. And also, there are ways to help yourself do it. So I've heard of people who, like to work out first thing in the morning and they will sleep in their workout gear.
Interesting.
So when they wake up in the morning, it's like, well, I'm already in this, so I might as well just go do it. It gets you a really good idea. Step closer, because then the morning happens and things go and you just don't do it. So it's like anything that you can do to make it easier on yourself for your future self, you should do that.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you also say is remove as many obstacles as you can, right? Yeah. If you kind of get some of the things that are already maybe in the way, and in that case, it's being dressed and ready to go. Maybe you just have your sneakers literally by your bed, and now there's really no excuse. You're pretty much dressed. Just go. Yep. Okay. I love that. Now, is not knowing how to prioritize part of the problem? Like what,
it could be. Yeah. Because, in big tasks like this, things that are overwhelming, it becomes very much like, oh, well, everything is a priority. Yeah. Everything is important, which is true. But being able to really look and say, okay, well, what are the steps? How can I get from one thing to the next? And sometimes you need support. You and I were in a writing group because it's not that we needed to learn how to write. We needed to have that sort of support to do it, to have somebody there to say, hey, write this every week or write, and that in itself is just, it's invaluable. Because then you're not doing it on your own. You're able to have accountability. You're able to see also how other people do it, which I think is important because a lot of times we think, oh, I should know how to do this. Oh, this should be easy. It's not. If it was, everyone would do it.
It's so true. So let's stay on accountability because I totally agree with you. I know that, especially as women too, I think we're so much more willing to show up for someone else. Like if you know every Friday, I think that's what you did, a Friday, right?
Fridays. Yep.
Writing, right? Or did you do a writing session at the same time, or did you just check in and say, I wrote today?
I started doing Fridays when I wrote my second book, Listful Living.
Yeah.
Because literally I think I had 3 months to write that book. It was a very quick turnaround.
Okay.
And so I thought if I don't block out this time and dedicate it and have it's nonfiction. So I already had an outline. I already knew what all the chapters were going to be. And so I literally would assign myself chapters every Friday. This is what I'm writing. This is what I'm doing. So it was very clear. You show up, that's what you're doing. And that's really helpful too. Because a lot of times what happens when you're working on a big project, you sit there and you figure out, what am I doing today? What should I do? So taking that friction out too, to be able to assign it to yourself so that you just sit down and just focus on that.
Yeah.
Really is helpful. Yes. And once the book was done and out into the world, I was like, you know what? I really loved keeping those Fridays for creativity. I really liked that. So I'm going to continue to do that. And I actually went on a writing retreat with our coach, Suzanne Kingsbury. And I met a woman, her name is Bev Sanders, and she was also working on a book. And we just clicked. We clicked, and that was 3 years ago. And we meet almost every Friday. Every Friday, she's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. We show up for each other. We chit chat. We're like, hey, how's it going? How was your week? Whatever. And then we time ourselves. We set 25-minute time blocks. We work on our stuff. We come back. We say hello. Okay, let's go back and do another 25 minutes. But we show up for each other. That's the only reason I've been able to finish this novel, is because she's there every week. And without it, sometimes I do it when we don't meet, the times that she can't do it, and sometimes I don't. So it's really important.
I think that's a huge, huge takeaway from what you're talking about, what we're talking about now. The fact that you had to show up for someone else, she's showing up for you. You made the commitment, not just to her, but to you. Mm-hmm. And as you said, you may not have stayed with that or has been as consistent with it without knowing that she was going to be on.
She was there. She was showing up. Exactly. And I did it, thinking back now too, I did it with my first book. I did it with Listful Thinking. Yes. In real life, I wrote in New York City, a woman who was also working on a book. She was working on fiction. We would meet at a cafe in the East Village. And we weren't really friends at that point. It was just like, hey, how'd your week go? Okay, whatever, great. And then she would write, I would write, we would have coffee, we'd have, lunch, whatever. Okay, bye, see ya. And that was that. And that was also, just something for me to cling to say, okay, that's my dedicated time. Sometimes you need that. And the same thing if you're working out or you're going somewhere, have a friend that's going to show up at the class with you.
That's right.
So that you both, are accountable to each other. Well, I'll go if she goes,
Exactly. You're definitely more likely to show up if you know your friend's going to be there. Or like you said, you don't even have to be that close with somebody. If you share a goal or an objective, then that's a big piece of it. And while you're talking, I was really just thinking so much about, just how important this one piece is. And this could be literally the missing link for someone.
Definitely.
Just have that accountability piece. And it doesn't have to feel so isolating. That was the other thing I was thinking about while you were talking, is that a lot of these things that we might want to do seem they're just maybe a little lonely or whatever, or like not as, don't seem as exciting. Not that doing laundry or some of the other things we busy ourselves with are exciting, but they don't seem as exciting. Let's talk about discipline. I've had this philosopher, Derek Notman, on the show a couple of times, and he's big into martial arts. And one of the things that is such a big piece of that is discipline. And I wonder, what's your thoughts on how much discipline someone needs to have? Is it a discipline thing when it comes to procrastination, or is it really unpacking the fear and getting the structure, like with the accountability and getting
fear is part of it? Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I think, but discipline, it's part of this too. It's a key.
Okay. Yeah.
And I do well with habit. I do really well with repetition, with sameness, with, knowing and showing up and saying, these are the times that I write. This is the time that I, for me, it's like that regularity. I have to have it. And I think it's also about knowing yourself and allowing this thing that you want to do to have the weight that it should. This is an extra project, right? Writing this book is an extra thing that you do on top of your whole life and your business and all these things, right? But being able to show up and say, like, you know what? I'm better when I write at 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, whatever it is. Why am I not scheduling the time then? Why am I scheduling it at 7 p.m. when I'm not going to do it? I'm totally exhausted and I just want to watch TV or whatever.
Yeah. You're going to go watch Only Murders in the Building.
Exactly. Right. Totally.
Yeah. Paula and I were just talking about that before the mics went on. I just think she's going to like that show for many reasons.
Yes.
And if anyone else hasn't seen it, it's a fun one. I'm only into the first season, so we'll see. So I think it's interesting. So discipline and mindset, how do you see them same but different? Because I think there's definitely been times in my life where I've made up my mind. I've just decided this is going to happen, and it happens. And that's been like consistently working out, journaling every morning, or whatever it is, or moving out here. Like once you make up your mind, it's amazing the momentum that gives you. And just, it's almost like you stop thinking about why you shouldn't, and you just think about doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And setting a deadline, I think, is helpful too. Even if but it has to be realistic. It can't be like, I'm going to finish the book completely by this date. Like, give yourself some kindness and be able to say, like, okay, by this date, pick your birthday if you don't have a date in mind. Like from this day until your birthday.
My birthday's in February. Is that enough time, Paula?
So that is enough time to do something.
Okay. Yes, it is for sure.
Set a goal for something.
I like
some
that.
Piece of that.
I'm going to actually say this on the show to maybe hold myself a little bit accountable, and then I'll have to come back in February and tell you where I am with that writing.
Yes. Yeah. Because that will help. That will help to be able to sort of name it, like for me, I'm thinking, okay, by the end of the year, I want to have done this. And also saying that out loud and saying it to my, to Bev, who writes with me every week, and her being there for me and me being there for her. It's really important. And I have put, writing time on my calendar on Tuesdays at 3:00 for the whole year. I don't think I did it once.
Because you weren't meeting with Bev?
Yeah. Because things spilled up. And also, I don't really like doing things at 3:00.
Then why did you put it at 3? Yeah.
Exactly. So I set myself up for failure.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Set yourself up when you, like, if you're a night owl and the kids are in bed or whatever it might be, and you actually would have the energy to write, or at least plan your day, or or do it first thing in the morning, maybe before everyone's up and out. I don't know. It's so, I think the mindset piece is important though. It's almost like you've made up your mind too, that when you're with Bev, you are committed.
That's it. That's the time that I have for it. I'm trying now to add a little bit more time in my week, because it's not enough. That 2 hours, we usually meet for about 2 hours. It's helpful. It has helped me, but if I want to be done by the end of the year, I don't have that much time left. So I need to add some more time to do this, so I'm hoping to add a little bit of time on Thursdays so that then Thursdays will spill into Friday, because the problem that I'm also having is that then I forget what I did last week.
Yes.
And I come back and have to reacclimate myself with what I did. But I've started to leave myself notes, little crumbs. Like, this is what you should work on next. So that when I sit down, I'm like, oh, okay, that is what I should work on next. Great. I've assigned myself that already. So giving yourself those little, nuggets, maybe for future you to use, is really helpful.
I love that. It's right. So you're not going back and reading like the last 10 pages just to get back on track. You're reminding yourself of kind of where the story.
What's next?
Do you ever feel like you want to write longer and then you don't because you just allotted the 2 hours, or how does that ever happen, or no?
Sometimes, you get in the groove and you're like, oh, this is really good. And then the timer goes off and then it's like, well, she's got to go. Okay, see you later. And I'll just finish it. I'll finish the thought or whatever, but it's not that I'm going to stay for another hour. It's that I need 15 more minutes just to button this up and then move on. And that's that,
Yes.
I find those short writing spurts, 25 minutes for me is really is good.
Okay. So how long did it take you to get your first draft done using this method that you've done with Bev?
I started writing it 3 years ago. It was the retreat I went on was September, 2019. It was right after my second book came out. And we started meeting maybe the beginning of the next year. So 2020, which was great too for 2020, because we couldn't do anything.
Gave you.
So it gave us that, that thing that we were working on, and we were able to, really connect on that level too. So it was almost every week, I would say. We did definitely during COVID more, for sure.
I think sometimes in terms of like, what would you regret? Like when I wrote my first book, I'm like, will you regret not having seen that through? And the answer was 100% I would regret
Yeah.
that. And so it's like, sometimes it's maybe sitting with what has been in your heart to do? What have you been procrastinating about that's important to you? Maybe just you. And that's like owning that A, that's okay. And B, how would you feel if, it was the end of your time here and you didn't see that through? Can you speak to that a little? Because I think about this stuff and sometimes that's a motivator for me.
Definitely. And also, maybe you don't want to do it. And that's okay. To look at that and say, I don't want to learn how to learn French. I haven't, it's been on the list for a long time. Do I care? I'm procrastinating on it. I keep showing up on the list over and over again. You know what? I don't even really care about that. So cross it off. Give yourself permission to be like, no, that's not a thing that I need to be doing. And I don't want to do it.
Interesting.
That's okay too, to take the opposite stance. Because we put so much pressure on ourselves to do more and be more and learn this and do that. And sometimes you don't even care. It's something that maybe you thought was cool because somebody else was doing or whatever it is. But I think about that too, like the idea of legacy. And, I don't have kids and I would like my books to live on and on and on.
Oh, I love that.
And I think
Paula.
about that. Yeah. I think about how could I help other people in a different way, and be able to have this speak to many people in all different parts of their lives at any time. To me, that's a motivating factor. So I think everybody sort of has to say like, well, why do you care about this goal so much? What does it actually mean to you?
Right. Right. And if it's like getting strong or fit, maybe it's just to like, make sure you're enjoying your life as long as you can, as healthily as you can, like getting to the heart of like what that motivation is. And I do love what you said. It's true, because maybe we're taking up mental space with these like, oh yes, I'm going to learn French. And then I'm going to go, whatever, like go live there for a month. And, maybe that is a dream, or maybe you don't have to be fluent to go do the dream part, like go live there for a month. You know what I mean? It's just maybe re-examining the goals that you have for yourself. It's just, I think it's so personal. And it's funny what you said about maybe it's not that important to you. I don't know if it was Debbie Millman. Somebody was on the show and they said, if you have a goal that you haven't like managed to like pursue, then it's really not that important to you. Yeah. And I think it's true in some cases, but I know for me, the book is, but I'm still procrastinating. So I think it's unpacking more of what you're talking about. Is there fear attached to it? Do I just need more structure, accountability? So some of the things you've talked about are the calendar, having the micro goals within the calendar. It's not like big picture, write book every day, because that's way too big. It's maybe more specific of like, write 1,000 pages this week. So then you break that down into whatever it is, 200 pages over 5 days, or however you might do it. Or maybe it's the 1,000 words on every Friday.
Right. And be realistic about it, but also time yourself and see like, what can you actually get done? Because a lot of times we'll say, oh, I want to write 1,000 words today. That's a lot of words. That's a lot of words if you're not in the groove and you don't really know who your characters are yet, and you're not really sure what you're doing, and and then you don't do it and you're like, why didn't I do that? So what I like to do is I like to watch myself first. I give myself like 25 minutes and I'll say, okay, let's just do it. Let's just write whatever I'm going to write. And then when the 25 minutes is over, I'm like, how many words did I actually get through in the 25 minutes? Yes. Okay, now I have a better idea of what I'm actually capable of doing. And then I can push myself a little bit too. I had a goal this year of like, read more books. What does that even mean? I don't even know how many books I read last year, So like this year I've been tracking
What's the benchmark? Right. Yeah.
Right. So this year I was like, oh, I should probably see like how many books I read this year so then I can have a goal for next year. So I've been tracking it.
Yes. You're not scheduling the reading time though, are you?
No, I mean, I do have specific times that I read, actually. I
do.
I listen to one audiobook that is either memoir or nonfiction while I get ready in the morning. And then I read some kind of fiction right before I go to bed. Those are my like 2 reading, or if I'm like on the beach or something, then of course I'm reading. But those are like my daily reading times.
Okay.
And I find, so I have 2 books going at the same time, but they're very different because I found that I was reading nonfiction a lot in bed and then taking notes and like not winding down. I was like, I cannot do it. So when COVID started, I was like, I'm going to start this new habit.
Yes.
And I'm going to read every night, but fiction only, 1 chapter, and just sort of go somewhere else, wherever the book wants to take me, and not be overwhelmed by like, oh, I should fix my website tomorrow or whatever other thing that comes up when you read, some sort of self-help or nonfiction book.
Totally. And I think from what you're saying, obviously there's going to be things that pop up that you don't anticipate. Like, especially if you have kids, like maybe they're homesick,
Definitely.
Things are going to get thrown off. But for the majority of the time, there's way more control. So you've talked about the calendar, the micro goals, the deadlines, the accountability, which I think is one of the hugest pieces of all that, the mindset shift and creating the habits. Like you said, you're more of a habitual type of person. You like things to be pretty structured, and then how we can maybe play with that ourselves. What about lists? Since you are the list queen, how can we use lists to maybe, is it, just prepping the night before? Do you do time blocking for your days where it's like 9 to 10 is when, you do your media training, or, how do you structure that way? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm very intentional about the way I structure my schedule for sure. And that, I've been working for myself for 5 years now. So after my first year of working for myself, I was like, okay, I did way too many Zoom calls. And this was before anybody was using Zoom. So I was already Zoom fatigued before anybody even knew what it was. And I didn't know who I talked to. I didn't know what I talked about. It was just too much. So I know for myself, I can do 2 Zoom calls where I'm like teaching or I'm doing something, I'm giving all my energy. And that's it for the day. I maybe could do 3 and then I'm really exhausted. And I know that now of myself. So I started to watch and say, okay, when do I feel the most excited to be on these calls? What do I do really well in the morning? What do I do really well in the afternoon? And really tap into my own productivity style. And so, my book, Listful Living, has a whole workbook basically of how to figure out your own productivity style, because it's important. You don't want to become a morning person if you're not one. You're not going to be productive. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So to be able to say to myself, you know what, I get up, I like to do a little yoga, I like to read the newspaper, I like to drink my tea. I don't like to talk to people first thing in the morning. It's just not what I do. I'll read emails, I'll reply back to people, but I'm not getting on calls before my first call is at 11:30. Because that's for me, like, okay, now I'm ready to go. I do an 11:30.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I do an 11:30 and I do a 1 most days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And that's really it. And then Mondays I reserve for my prep time of what needs to be done for the week. Is there any kind of like writing for social media or for my, email lists or whatever that need to happen. And then Friday, of course, I reserve for my creative projects. And I found that just having that segmentation and allowing myself to say, okay, well, if it doesn't fit in this week, it doesn't happen. And that's okay. Is there an opening next week? And just being able to do that, because we try to fit too much in the day.
Yeah.
And then and especially now people are working from home and living at home and doing everything from home. And, there's a lot of overlap. Yeah. But for me, that's the way that I've been able to sort of have the boundaries to give myself some space, because otherwise then you have no room left for creativity or for living a life.
It's so true. And are you doing daily lists for the next day before you start? You are. And are you also doing a Sunday review of the week?
I do everything the night, like the end of the day. So the night before I will do, that is my shutdown strategy.
Okay.
And everybody needs one, because otherwise you're just day bleeds in and then you're doing emails and then you're, so for me, it's writing that list. It's the last thing that I do. I say, okay, what do I have the time and the resources to do tomorrow? Not what would I love to do tomorrow? Not what would I big write book would be on that list, right? And we do not put that on there.
Let's look at my calendar now. Oh yes, I see that on my calendar. Yes. Literally, yeah, 100%, 100%.
So it needs to be much more specific, right? Work on this chapter, work on this story, work on this, whatever,
character development.
Yes. Right. Go back and change this piece. And so, I use a lot of lists as I'm writing too, to say, okay, I'll get to it. And that was part of the strategy too, just to go off course just a tiny bit, is that better to have it all done than say it's perfect. So a lot of times, even for me, I was like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like, this could be a really funny part. I just don't have it in my head right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave myself a note to make this funnier later.
Yes.
And move on and just keep going, because the tendency is to stay there and be like, well, let me just finish it. Let me just do this. And then you don't get to the next part or the next part and the next part. You don't finish it. So it really is important to get that first draft out. And even if it's, it's not perfect, it's okay. It's there. You'll go back, you'll refine it later, but having that list, getting back to the list, having the list the night before really does help, because then the next day when I come in, I see, okay, this is the intention for the day. This is what I would love, this is what I've set for myself to do. And it just makes it easier to sort of plug and play. Okay, great. I'm going to do this next. I'm going to do that next. And I do that Friday night as well, then for Monday. So then I don't have the Sunday, like, oh my gosh, tomorrow it's like, I've already done it. I already set myself up.
Your weekends are for you to enjoy your time with your husband and just have fun, right?
Go to the beach. Yes.
Right. Because you're in Miami now. And are you time blocking or no? Is it just a list? And do you have like the big goal, or do you have like, how are you structuring that for the day?
So I structure it by time of day.
Yeah.
Because I also know when I'm most productive, like when I can actually, and thinking through that too for yourself, like when are you most productive? When can you do these tasks best?
Yes.
Put them on your schedule at those times. Don't schedule calls at 3:00 if you're really tired at 3:00. Do them earlier if that's what you want to do. And so I just sort of look at the day and then say, okay, between this time and this time, also knowing how long things take. So that's another thing, is timing yourself and knowing, okay, well, if I'm going to, write back to emails, or if I'm going to write a blog post, or if I'm going to, prep for my live stream show, whatever, how long does that actually take? And give yourself those time blocks. But I just look at it really as like, this 1 hour window. What can I do in there?
When you're productive for certain tasks, which tasks you're more productive at certain times. And the other thing I heard you say is, don't let perfectionism be the better of the good.
Definitely.
Because so many of us are guilty. So like if your goal was to lose 10 pounds and you lost 3, it's not like you just scrap it, right? Yeah. Yeah. Or your goal was to write 1,000 pages for the week and you wrote 200, like celebrate the wins along the way. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's really, Seth Godin calls it ship it. Just ship it. Get it out, get it out. And that's, like from my TV days too, like you had no choice. The 5:00 news is happening. This is good enough, Could you have written a little bit more, a better word, used a better word here or there? Yeah, but you didn't have time. So it's got to be out there. So that mentality, just to ship it, that really keeps it going, just to say, you know what, I will come back to this later. I just need to get it done. Get it to a place where it's better than it was before. And even for you, if it's one chapter that you've written instead of a whole book, that was one chapter.
I know.
That's amazing.
It's true.
Most people don't do this. I mean, that's the other
I know
thing.
That 90% of the people don't write a book who say they're going to write a book, or maybe it's higher than that. I don't know.
Yes, they do not. And it's even harder than to sell the book once you do write it. But
that's another podcast. Yeah, you'll have to come back on once you've done that and talk to us about that process.
Yes,
it's so true. So many great takeaways, though. I mean, I'll just recap a little bit, but being realistic, setting the habits, changing the mindset. Creating structure and discipline, the micro goals within your calendar, knowing your productivity style and scheduling around that. And the highlight of all of this, I'm going to say, is I do believe the accountability piece, whether that's like an imposed deadline or ideally a partner, even if they're not like your bestie, like maybe that's even better. You know what I mean?
It is better. Yeah. I think it's better. And that has been, every time I've done this, it has been someone that I have then become good friends with.
Yes.
But we didn't start that way. And I think that was a key too, because that didn't distract us.
Right. You weren't just chit-chatting about everything else because it's more fun, because you want to catch up with your friends.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love this. Anything you want to add that we didn't talk about before we wrap up?
Well, I think just, kindness for yourself too. I think that's just an important thing that we always forget. And it is important to go easy on yourself. We go, especially at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, we're like, oh, these are the things I want to do. And this is, think about all the things you've done. I think that's a better list to make, is to say, okay, let's look at the year and see, what did I accomplish? Maybe that wasn't on the list that I, wanted to do that, but I did do it. This is where my time and my focus was. And I do that every December. For my business and personally, I look back at the year and I say, okay, what did I do? What did I love? what did I not love? What do I want more of next year? And, I just set these lists and I have a template that I use every year. And it really has helped me to structure my life the way that I want it to be.
I love that. That's a beautiful place to end and just for people to reflect on. It's true. Take stock. And, we are going into a new year, depending on when people end up hearing this.
Yeah.
And look at what you have accomplished and then maybe just find that accountability partner and shift that mindset. And we'll see. I'll have to do an update in February around my birthday.
Yeah, now you've said it.
Where I'm at. Well, no, I like that you've kind of given me a deadline. I know from my Myers-Briggs type, I'm a perceiver. I need the deadline. I thrive on deadline. I thrive on it. So that's another piece. That's a different show.
I'm excited to see what you create then.
Thank you. And I'm excited to see where you go with your book because I know one of the characters from having been in your group and he's very fun. I can't wait to see what he's up to. So where can I direct people, Paula? Where do you hang out? Where do you like to connect?
So if they go to paularizzo.com/lists, they can get my list making starter kit and find out all kinds of good stuff about productivity and list making and the like. My books, Listful Thinking, Listful Living, and I'm at List Producer on all social media.
And I'll link all that. So all of the show notes for today will be at thegoodlifecoach.com. Within the resources section will be a link to Paula's website and your freebie. That's so nice. You have that. Yeah. So that's paularizzo.com/lists plural.
Yes.
Okay.
Lists.
And I'll for sure link that. Always so fun to have you on the show. You're such a bright light and you've got me motivated. So I'm sure people listening feel the same. So thank you so much.
Good. Of course.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you gained some new information or inspiration for your life. That is the essence of this show is to really wake up to what's possible for you, to reclaim your beautiful voice, and to really learn to love and prioritize yourself. So if you gained any value from any of the conversations you've tuned into, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. You can do that right now on your phone. And please do consider leaving a rating and review if you have yet to do so on Apple Podcasts. It's actually how more women can find the show. And I really want to grow a community of women who are loving themselves and living full on. So thank you as always for tuning in. And I look forward to reconnecting with you next Wednesday. Bye for now.